Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you all doing? Good. The apostles said to Jesus, increase our faith. I think the prayer of the apostles should be our prayer too. Lord, increase our faith. You know, when we look at the situation of the world around us, we look at all of the pride and the greed and the dishonesty, and when we see the suffering and brutality every day in the news, we feel like the prophet Habakkuk, who cried out in our first reading, I cry for help, O Lord, but you don't listen. I cry violence, and you do not intervene. Destruction and misery are before me. But then the Lord answered Habakkuk, the vision still has its time. It presses on to fulfillment. It will not disappoint. If it delays, wait for it. It will surely come. The just one, because of his faith, shall live. Now you might be thinking something like this. You know, that all sounds very promising, but it's hard to believe. I sure can't see it. Of course we can't. If we could see the vision, we wouldn't have to believe it. But since we can't see it, there's not a lot of evidence of it sometimes, we're called to faith. That's why we say, Lord, increase my faith. Now just take a look at the situation of our own lives. How often do we get tired and discouraged with our own lives? It sometimes just seems like one thing after another, you know? And, that's hard to live with, you know? And we're called to believe because we certainly cannot see. We can't see. You know, talking of life, we learned a lot about the life of Mother Teresa after she died. And some of what we learned was surprising. For example, for much of her life, she lived with uncertainty and discouragement. To a point where some people said they didn't think she had very strong faith. They don't understand what faith is. Mother Teresa had fantastic faith to be able to keep doing day after day, year after year, what she was doing without letting uncertainty or discouragement stop her or lose heart. That's faith. And sometimes we get the idea that the saints live sort of idyllic lives, you know. They are always in ecstasy. They're always in this glow of God's presence and things like that. And they're moments, sure. What we need to remember is that uncertainty and discouragement is a normal part of the life of a saint, just as much as it is a normal part of our lives. I'm reminded of the great saint, Saint Teresa of Avila, a great mystic. You know, for 20 years, she could not sense the presence of God. Think about that. Living for 20 years without that sense of the presence of God. No wonder her prayer is so quoted so frequently. She prayed, Lord, This is the way you treat your friends. No wonder you have so few. We believe something is true without palpable evidence. That's faith. You know, it's very easy to believe in the love of God when everything's going our way. When we're dealing with trials or with sufferings, it's not so easy. That's when we need faith. That's why I say today, I hope the prayer of the apostles is also our prayer. Lord, increase our faith.